have been trying this more is because YouTube's algorithm actually promote going live in vertical over horizontal now. Because other platforms go live and, well, unless you're on a computer, but I'm not doing this live on a computer. And I do actually have like a webcam thingy revolver. You can go live on a computer. I'm just not doing it that way. So here's the braid from yesterday. This is what it looks like in. This is what it looks like before I take it out. Because I slept in it, and people often ask, how do I sleep in my hair? I just leave my hair styling. Like, why? I try to do a one and done hair day because I feel like brushing your hair on the daily, it's already enough manipulation, guys. Like, why do you need more? Why do you need more? Like, ideally, I would love if I didn't have to brush my hair every single day, but you have to. Like, of course. Actually, I love brushing my hair every single day. I take that back because it's scalp stimulation. And people keep saying you need to buy all these scalp scrubbers, or you need to oil your scalp and stimulate your scalp. And I was kind of thinking recently, maybe you don't. Well, I've always thought that, but this is my thinking about this. Like, if you're not washing your hair all the time, and I've said this for a long time, and I've heard other people finally say that they feel this way too, your own scalp produces oil. And there was somebody that was trying to tell me in some comment when I said that your own scalp produces oil, they were saying, oh, but that's not enough nutrients for your scalp. But hear me out. When in the history of the world have you ever seen people doing scalp oiling the way that you're seeing on YouTube right now? They don't. Even in India, like when people do hair oiling, they're oiling their hair. They're not like strategically there's no culture in the civilization of this world that oils their scalp that way. And I don't think it's necessary. Like, just put oil on the ends of your hair. Some oil will end up naturally in your scalp. If you want to do, and the funny thing is, the people who are saying a lot that they're really into deep scalp oiling, they also think that you need to wash your hair multiple times per week. So which one is it? Like, you're saying, oh, if I don't wash my hair multiple times per week, I'm going to get scalp irritation, but then you're putting all that oil directly on your scalp. It doesn't make any sense. It's a fad, okay? And I don't want to be part of the trend-setting fads of what grows your hair long. I just want to do things that have always helped my hair grow. Like, you don't need to do, like, if you're into gentle hair care, you don't need to oil your scalp. It's not necessary. I finally, because I've been trying to think about it, I'm like, there's no culture in the planet that oils their scalp the way that these influencers are showing to do it. They just don't. And you can think that they do, but even Ayurvedic, they do not oil their scalp like that. Like, they have a very strategic way of oiling their hair, but it's not like just it's just a heavy hair oiling, and that's different. That's far different. And the reason they do that is because they have different methods of washing their hair, and it's a way to cleanse their hair. It's not just scalp specific. So it's a scam in my opinion. I think scalp oiling is highly unnecessary. Yes, I finally said it. I don't think it's going to grow your hair any more than just like put some oil on your hair, brush your hair, and the oil goes in your scalp. If you want to like have the benefits of like hair oiling on your scalp, stretch out your hair washing. It's that simple. It really is. It's very simple. So all the things people say will grow their hair, they don't really necessarily do that. I don't want to just brush out my hair. I want to do some cooking, and then I'm going to cook today. I'm going to cook today. I want to do some cooking. know when it's a retracted message, it's a bad one. All the people that write bad messages, they get retracted. I always laugh. Retracted message, bad message. Lackofselfcontrol.com. Hi. I really like this shirt because it's bright palm trees. Like, is this brush softer? I mean, this brush feels pretty soft. It definitely does, but sometimes I wonder, is it really, like, when I'm going up and over, up and up? Experimenting a little, like, with the feel of it. Like, because I do think this is a good brush. Is it really less soft is my question. I don't know. Maybe it is. Cleaning your hairbrush as you go. It's my favorite. I love to clean my hairbrush as I go. I just do. It's my favorite. Oh my god. It's something on the ceiling. So oh my gosh, it's still there. Oh my gosh. Ah! Spider web on the ceiling. I had to kill it. I need to get the Swiffer. Thanks. Some lotion out there. Lotion, I got glitter lotion. It's served in really well. I try to take very good care of my hair, you know, hair health and all that. And the thing I love about having lotion on my hands is like when I brush, I actually want to put more lotion on my hands because I don't like to continue to brush my hair without my hands feeling supple. Just for me, because I feel like I just don't want I don't want my hands to feel rough if I'm touching my hair. Like I just feel like to me. Plus this lotion has some cocoa butter in it, so it just, and I've heard a lot of people say that, and I had cocoa butter a long time ago, that they love to put that in their hair. You do have to melt it down though, I feel like, to have a good consistency to apply it, in my opinion. But cocoa butter can be very beneficial for your hair. I just use like coconut oil, olive oil. That's what I like olive oil, honestly. I know some people are like, but you're gonna smell like an olive. I don't know, put some essential oil in it. It'll mask the smell of the olive, in my opinion. But I love the smell of olive oil, like, or just use like I have the Yves Rocher coconut oil, sesame seed oil blend, and I've been using that. Hi. Just wanna see like how I brush my hair out to my satisfaction. Just trying to see if I like the way I brushed up my hair. Just trying to ascertain, does it feel good? I think it does. I'm gonna do like maybe a tiny little braid. better than go rummage. I can rummage. Don't be not wanting to look through your hair ties. Thanks. Oh, golly, what did I do? Come on, be a good egg. I guess the iPhone 11 is just saying you need to buy a new iPhone 15, but I'm trying to save money, guys. And we're like, I go traveling. Why don't you go traveling? Look, I'd love to do a lot of things, but I live in realistic land where I have a budget, and they don't. So whatever. Don't, you know. Because that's the thing, I'm going to talk about this. A lot of people, I think, they like to, they're like, they can do this and they can do that. But when somebody's not, like, understanding that the majority of people have a budget. You're lucky if you have a place to live and food to eat. There's a lot of people, like, oh, like, what about what's happening in Gaza right now? And then people are like, oh, you can't afford to travel to Tahiti this week? No, I can't. I'm sorry. I can't afford to go on a $30,000 cruise. That'd be great. But I live in reality land. Like, there are people that are truly suffering, and their definition of suffering is that you can't afford to travel. Look, I would love to travel, but the next time someone says that to me, it's just wild. Like, when people have... It's nice that they can do that, but they need to be cognizant that most people can't afford to do those things. And it's fun to do that stuff, but I live in realistic land, right? You know, I'm not going to be like, yeah, I can do this and I can afford to do that. You're lucky to be able to afford a home and shelter. And I know that goes against, like, a lot of people who just have a lot of expendable money, and they seem, most people I think that have expendable incomes, like, they came from, like, some of them, like, they had to work to get there, so they understand. But I think some people that have just always been in that position, they're like, they're just God, or I don't know. So I just feel like if I ever did afford to travel, I would never be like, oh, you can't afford to travel? Like, can't you just, like, get a deal or, like, go with a group? And I'm like, no, because I actually have bills. I live on a budget. And I think, though, being able to live on a budget is a good thing. I know a lot of people think it's so horrible, like, living on a budget. And for them, like, a budget is, oh, they just don't get coffee this week. But let's be real here. If you can afford, like, even I used to get coffee more, but I'm trying to be better. Like, I brought K-cups with me this week, but I think I'm going to try to get even tighter to where I just buy the reusable K-cup, because I'm, you know, because I've realized here and there are things I pay for, but I'm realistic. I'm not going to Tahiti next week. I would love to, but are you going to pay for me to go? Like, that's my dream vacation. We want to go see, like, all the sites where Mutiny on the Bounty took place. Big Mutiny on the Bounty fan, you know, like, well, the Mutiny took place in sea, but I just love Tahitian culture, and I love reading about it, and the tie-dye material, and the material that they make from the tree. I used to know the name of the tree it was. And I want to eat breadfruit, like fresh breadfruit. I think that would be amazing. Of course, most people would be like, oh, they just want to look at the flowers and sit on the beach. But I actually want to go look at the cultural things in Tahiti, like I did in Hawaii. Oh, I love Hawaii. I love Hawaii. Hawaii is so exciting, but I haven't been there in so long. But like when you go into the countryside of Hawaii, you look around, not just the touristy stuff. Like I like looking at the countryside. That's my opinion. You know, I don't know. I would love to, but I don't have money to do these things. I live in the land of realism, guys. But this shirt reminds me of Tahiti, and that's why I bought it, or Hawaii. And I painted like over the years. Like I mean, I would still love to go to Tahiti or Hawaii and things like that. But that's why I painted a lot of tropical art, because I was really obsessed with South Pacific, and I just thought it'd be so neat to go on a trip. And I love like the traditionally made cloths, and it was like a big obsession when I was younger. Like, it's not that I've forgotten about it, it's just like a fond memory. I'm like, yeah, I remember, like, I wanted to go look around and see all these historical sites and kind of find out more about the local culture, although not the tourist stuff. And I feel like that would be fun. That would be really fun. Like, more of it's just, it's a very tranquil vacation thought, though, not like, I think most people when they go to those places, they want to like do water sports, and I don't want to do that. I just want to go look at all the historic sites that I've read about over the years. I just think that would be, oh, and then the thing about Tahiti is I do speak a little bit of French, but you also have the Tahitian language, and it would be fun just to see in Papete, like how it blends. And like, yeah, I've always been kind of, and you know, I love that Manoi oil. Did I ever tell you why? Why do we love the Manoi oil? I never told you the whole reason why. Because when I was 13, I was obsessed with Tahitian culture, and Yves Rocher is a French brand, and my mom was like, let's buy the Manoi oil because you love Tahitian stuff, and that is why I'm obsessed with it. But I forget to talk about that. I'm like, yeah, I'm obsessed with that. I'm tapping into this old memory. And when I tap into it, it brings back good memories just of reading. Like the first time I learned about the story behind the Mutiny on the Bounty, I watched the movie with Marlon Brando, which, by the way, watch it if you want to see something campy, because Marlon Brando, I mean, as a human being, I do think he was a good person, because he did stick it to Hollywood and about their racism, really. But you know who was the better actress in the movie? Was his ex-wife, Tarita. Like, she's of Tahitian and Chinese origin, but she's a better actress than Brando. And she got this is the sad thing, she looks like a Disney princess. If you ever look up Tarita and you look up her story, she looks like a Disney princess. The woman is legit beautiful. Like, she was in her 80s and she still had impeccable skin. She was a very, very beautiful woman. And the way that Marlon Brando treated her, it was deplorable. Like, she had a movie contract, okay, after Mutiny on the Bounty. She was recognized for what a great actress she was. And he was so jealous of her. He wanted her to abort her first child. That's how jealous he was. And he was married to her, and she said no. She wasn't going to do that. So she had her son. And I guess he's had some issues. Her daughter had issues and ended up committing suicide. It's kind of a sad story. But through all that, she wasn't going to give up having her child. And when Brando was married to her, like, he was abusive to her. Like, he would go out with other women in front of her. I guess one time the housekeeper came into the house and saw her tied up, because Brando was into some weird stuff. But I did like the movie. I'm going on a tangent. Mutiny on the Bounty, the 1962 movie, like, I was so fascinated, because when I was 13, I wanted to know what is the true story behind it. So I started reading like some articles in National Geographic, and then it said you can find out about Pitcairn, which, by the way, it's had a very tragic story too. Pitcairn Island, like, some of it's tragic, what happened, the history, and whatnot, but very fascinating, and how the mutineers hid out on Pitcairn Island, and well, the story's sad, but if you read into it, you know what, no, I'm going to talk about it. Okay. So, the mutineers were Englishmen who had never seen a beautiful tropical island like Tahiti. So So in 1789, they ended up having to furlough for 10 months in Tahiti because the breadfruit, like they didn't predict its season and they came during the dormant season, so they had to stay. And William Bligh was very upset because he was just obsessed with his mission. Lieutenant William Bligh wanted to get the breadfruit to England because, well, the story behind it that enrages you a bit, like the reason they wanted to transport, no, they're going to take the breadfruit to Jamaica actually first. The reason being is because, the slave owners in Jamaica had read, because of horticulture, that breadfruit might be a cheap food source for slaves. I'm like, you're disgusting. Like, that's gross. So all these things derailed. It's kind of funny. It's almost like the universe was kind of intervening. And I found this very comical, and I've never heard anybody else talk about this part. I feel like the universe, in a way, I believe in God, okay, yeah. But just like, there were all these events that prevented the breadfruit from getting to Jamaica the first time. It's pretty hilarious. So first they come during the dormant season because they didn't know much about this plant, and they came during the wrong time of year, so they had to wait 10 months. William Bligh wasn't very charismatic. He was just kind of like, oh, follow the rules, be a good boy. Like, he was just a very good Navy man. But here you have like these Englishmen that some of them, they're from kind of rough and tumble backgrounds, and they're in Tahiti experiencing this beautiful climate, and then many of them become attached to the women that they meet there, and they marry them, and some of them are going to have children with these women, so they don't want to leave, okay? And then you have William Bligh, who's just kind of, he's not very, like in the movie, they kind of personify it wrong. They make it seem like he's a really horrible tyrant, and he whipped his men more than others, but actually Captain Cook used to whip his men more than Bligh. It gets interesting, okay? Like, it gets really interesting. So, if you look into the real history behind it, and I actually read several books about it. Like, you have the book The Bounty by Caroline Alexander. That actually tells you the true story behind Meet Me on the Bounty. So anyway, they finally have waited the 10 months. The breadfruit seedlings are ready to be transported, and they're supposed to make that's their primary goal. The mission is to make sure as many breadfruit trees as possible live, okay? Little seedlings. Like, it's a horticultural mission, basically. And Fletcher Christian, who is the second in command, who William Bligh appointed himself, he had been, in the movies they make it seem like they just met on this ship, and the only reason he appointed him was because, he had to and he was forced to, but in reality, Fryer was supposed to be second in command, but it turned out he wasn't very good. When they tried to go around Cape Horn the first time, like they were encountering bad, rainstorms, and they lost a lot of supplies on the ship. So then they redirected, and they had to sail the long way around the world, around the Cape of Good Hope in South Africa. So Fletcher Christian ended up being second in command of the HMS Bounty, and that's probably where the mistake happened, because William Bligh wanted him on this expedition because they were somewhat friends. I guess what people don't see in the movies is that, well, there is one movie. There's a later 1984 movie with Mel Gibson, but that's kind of a darker movie, and it gets a lot of things inaccurate too. But Fletcher Christian was actually kind of like an uncle figure to William Bligh's children. Okay, so the movies just portray him, well, up until the 1984 one, as this tyrant that whipped his men, and how he was like draconian. But he just was very much a disciplinarian. But he didn't even whip his men more than some of the other more charismatic, like Cook was considered a charismatic leader of his mission. But Captain Cook ended up getting killed in Hawaii because he made some mistakes in communication, and he didn't know about natives people and how they had a certain ritual, and he offended them in some way, and he ended up being killed. So he wasn't as successful in some ways as William Bligh, who actually survived this you know, this expedition in an open boat. Jumping ahead. So anyway, so you have men that are just, I don't know, they're kind of rough and tumble guys, and they've been, some of them, they say nobody was pressed into like forced to be on this ship, because you know there used to be, even like for white people in the British Navy, if you were poor, sometimes they'd just gather you up and force you to be like a worker on a ship, not make much. Sometimes there were other ethnicities too. On the Bounty, they said one of the men might have been mixed. I don't know. They don't know for sure. But it was a smaller ship, smaller expedition, one ship, smaller ship. They didn't even feel the ship was fully equipped for the journey of transporting the breadfruit. So anyway, you have all these men who, they don't really want to be on a voyage to transport breadfruit, and you take them to this most beautiful place that most Europeans have never seen before, and they meet these beautiful women and they fall in love with them, and they want to have a family with them, and then you're telling them, no, you have to leave. So these men, they don't want to leave their wives. They wanted to stay, and that was kind of that would have been their reasoning for wanting to mutiny against William Bligh. Well, William Bligh was just very much a disciplinarian, and when they were on the way back to England, well, Jamaica first before they get to England, which is the funny serendipitous reason that the breadfruit doesn't make it there the first time, which I find kind of hilarious. When they're on this voyage, he's just being very draconian, and he's telling people that, oh my gosh, he took my coconuts and they were to the top already. Like, he's kind of a micromanager. He's not very personable. He just wasn't a good commander, okay? Like, he didn't really resonate with his people. So anyway, it gets to the point that Fletcher just can't take it anymore. He was about to just escape, like in some sort of raft. Like, he just couldn't take it because him and Bligh were just having a falling out. I would say it's kind of like a friendship falling out. And I think for personal reasons, like sometimes being friends with somebody on an expedition or in a business, like I would say, like, I know they say it's an old wives' tale, but sometimes it's better just not to go into business with friends, okay? Because sometimes there's big disputes that happen, or people have a falling out, and then you have to deal with that. And it's more heated. Like, if it's somebody that, yeah, you might be a business partner with, but you weren't friendly with them and you didn't consider them like a member of your family, I feel like it's going to lack a certain heatedness. And just this expedition had a heatedness to where Fletcher felt like he couldn't take. And I do think, to be honest with you, even if William Bligh wasn't the harsh tyrant that history has portrayed him to be, and there's a reason for that, because the people that mutinied against him later, they're captured in Tahiti, and when they come back, they want to defend themselves, so they make up a story with their families, and like the Christians hire lawyers to protect the honor of Fletcher Christian and others, just to argue that Bligh was a tyrant, and that's the reason they mutinied. And it was a fiction to some extent, because they didn't want to be hanged, and they were trying to save their lives, because you could be hanged for mutiny, okay? You could be hanged for mutiny, even if the captain survived, and William Bligh was the Lieutenant William, he wasn't a captain, even if he survived, you could be hanged for it. So they made up this story, like later on when they were recaptured in Tahiti. So anyhow, some of them aren't recaptured. Some of them go to live on Pitcairn. So you have Fletcher Christian, who has this, like, he has this animosity towards Bligh because they were friends, and I think some of it was more heated. And I do believe, like, it seems that Bligh was harder on him and, like, emotionally abusive in a way. And I don't know, like, Bligh probably had some emotional issues going on. He just was emotionally abusive to Fletcher, and Fletcher couldn't take it anymore because he knew he was an upstanding man, but he made a bad mistake. He let his emotions override his rational thought process, and he should have just been like, okay, this expedition is horrible, but we need to just finish it, go back. But I don't think they wanted to go back. Here's the reason. They were married to those women, and they wanted to have families with them, and I totally get it. And that was something that they didn't predict was going to happen, because they didn't know anything about Tahiti. Like, they were one of the first groups of English people to visit Tahiti. They didn't know that they were going to fall in love with these women, and that they were going to have children. They were going to be there for 10 months. So some of them just didn't want to go back, and Fletcher probably didn't really want to go back either, because, you know, he was in love with the woman he met, and a lot of them had married them, so they just didn't want to go back. Plus, what were they going back to? They were going back to England. Plus, who's invested in this? Like, the reason behind the whole HMS Bounty, like, to transport breadfruit to Jamaica for a cheaper food source for, like, people who have been enslaved, it's like, who's behind that? And then the men on the ship feel like they're being mistreated. So there's a lot of, and I've heard people say this, there's just a lot of, like, people not wanting to go along with this. And it was a storm in the teacup that ended up resulting in Fletcher saying, you know what, I'm going to take the ship. And the men that really, they did want to go back to England. Like, some of them, they come from lower class backgrounds. They're not going to have some lovely life. They wanted to stay in Tahiti where food is plentiful, and they're married to these women they love. And even if some of them weren't attached to a particular woman, like, it's paradise to them. Like, why are you going to go back to England? Like, I don't know. Let's go back to England. They just don't. Honestly, that's why a lot of people love England. That's why my mom's ancestors left England. Once you leave, you don't want to go back. I am not into British colonization, but I think a big part of it, a big component of it, was a lot of British people ended up realizing it's better other places than in England. And that might make people upset, but it's just the truth. It's just the truth. Well, even the Midwest, like the American Midwest, I don't want to live there. I like California. Like, a lot of people are like, move to other states where it's cheaper. I'm like, no. Why? Who wants to live in places where it's not sunny? This is just my opinion. If you like overcast, like, some people want to live in Seattle, Washington. They love the rain. Like, there are some people in California, like, they cry about the sunshine. I don't know. And they talked about moving to Seattle, but then 20 years later, the ones that were crying about, I never saw them move. So I don't understand what that was about either. Maybe it's just what it is that when you experience, like, a beautiful place, you don't want to go back. And then you're on the ship, and if you don't have much social mobility in your life, in 1789, social mobility was much harder than it is today. Like, your options, like, you have this very tangible option that you can go back to Tahiti. Well, they couldn't stay there, by the way. The mutineers couldn't stay there. The ones that did, they made a grave mistake. You couldn't stay there. So they took the ship. They put Bligh in an open boat, and it turns out, like, even some of the men that didn't like Bligh, they went with him. You know why? Because they're like, well, we're Navy men, like, we are soldiers, like, we're officers and, like, of the British Navy. You can't just leave. You can't just go. Like, even though some of them didn't like Bligh, I think Fletcher Christian was surprised about the number of men that decided to remain loyal to Bligh. And they put him out on an open ship, which could have been a death sentence, by the way. That could have been a death sentence. But even though Bligh was problematic in so many different ways, what they did to him wasn't the best, okay? They wanted to kill him. Like, some of them were, like, blood hungry. They wanted to kill Bligh just because they want to go back to Tahiti, and they don't care about consequences. So Fletcher had to talk these men down and be like, no, you can't do that, because if we get caught later, that would be murder. So they put him on the ship. They give him, like, some food, but not really enough to survive. And the fact that William Bligh was able to use his memory without a good, like, compass to navigate all the way from somewhere in Tonga area all the way east to, like, modern day Indonesia, which was the Dutch East Indies, in an open raft on minimal, and that everybody survived. He had health problems for the rest of his life after this, but the fact that they all lived and then he kept his men as healthy as he could when they barely had any water. It's pretty extraordinary. He was a very good navigator. And they said the maps he drew, like of the South Pacific, were so accurate that some of them used like all of his coordinates up until 1970s when he started having aerial maps. Like they were that good. Like he was that good of a navigator. It's pretty amazing. So I do think he wasn't the best people person. He wasn't Captain Cook. Captain Cook's men loved him. But the thing that people don't acknowledge about Captain Cook is that he didn't read people very well, and he ended up getting killed himself. And William Bligh did not get killed, when he was on his tours of duty. But the legacy of wanting to transport breadfruit to Tahiti as a cheap food source for slaves is so problematic, and I just think it's a little serendipitous it didn't work the first time, and then they had to replan it, and the second time when they went with him, they had to bring armed Marines and 3 ships, and it was a whole military operation where it's the first time you just sent him on this little ship, and it wasn't the best ship, and he didn't really have as many experts as he should have had with him, but Fletcher Christian found out that mutinying wasn't. I just stopped braiding my hair and I got into my story. Okay, so Fletcher Christian found out that being a commander of a ship isn't quite as easy as you think, because even though he mutinied against Bligh, he didn't want to kill him. He didn't want to kill anybody. He didn't want to do the wrong thing, because Bligh was a bad leader, but he wasn't, he was their lieutenant captain. He was their commander. So Bligh tried to take not Bligh, but Fletcher, after he became the commander of the mutiny, he had to try and take some sort of control of the ship, and he found out his men didn't always agree with him, and these are the same people that wanted to kill Bligh, so that's fun. You're gonna be in control of these men. And they were gonna go find first they were gonna go get the women that they married in Tahiti, but they realized they had to hide, okay? Because even though back then they're not gonna find me right away, of course the British are going to send out a ship to try and get their mutineers back so they can take them back to England and put them on naval trial. Of course they're going to. It's just a matter of a few years. So you have a few years to try and hide. It's not like nowadays where it would just be weeks or months or maybe a day because you could send a military airplane. Back then, the world, you could hide. Much easier, but you had to hide, and you had to find a good island to hide. So they go back to Tahiti, they get their wives, they bring a few men with them, and then they look for an island to hide on. But they have a very hard time trying to find an island, and then some of the men are like, you know what, because they're going around with Christian, we don't want to keep searching for an island to hide on. We want to go back to Tahiti. It's just better because when you're searching for an island to hide on, you're not in as bad of a situation as Bligh was in an open boat, but your food sources start to plummet. So some of them want to go back, and some of them make the mutiny, the bounty, not the mutiny, the bounty, take them back to Tahiti, and they drop off those men who, by the way, are later recaptured. And one of them claims that he didn't even participate in the mutiny, and he was asleep. How convenient. You were asleep during a commotion on a ship. You must sleep through anything. I don't know if I believe that. I don't really believe that, And the funny thing is they hate William Bligh so much, but he actually was more humane than some captains. He instituted this 3-watch system where they would split up the watches into 3 instead of 2 so people could sleep more. He was actually more thoughtful in that way. And he was thoughtful about exercise. He didn't want his men to become lethargic on the ship, so he would have them dance to music, and he brought a musician along. There were things about him that were not as bad as people thought, but hey. So you have the mutineers, some of them want to go hide, and the other ones are going to stay in Tahiti, and then Fletcher takes some of the men with him, and there are some Tahitians that come along and some women, but there was a problem. They didn't bring enough. This is a horrible reason that everybody's going to have a big Well, they're not even sure exactly what happened. We just have accounts of women and children on Pitcairn. So anyway, years later, when they find them 20 years later, but apparently, it seems so strange, they didn't take enough women so everybody could have like a wife, and then the Tahitian men didn't have like their own wives, and it becomes like a war over women. Literally, it becomes a war over women, which some people might be like, that's disgusting, but this is history. Okay, this is history. So they're hiding on this little island. They find Pitcairn by mistake, and then they decide to settle there, and they destroy the bounty by sinking it and burning it, so they can't be found. And they say in the first few years everything was okay, but eventually they're not treating the Tahitian men as well. And one of the Tahitian men did have a wife who ended up liking another man better, so she left him, and that caused we don't know all the details, but they say that caused like a war. And then apparently the Tahitian men were upset that one of their wives had been taken by the Englishman, so they killed some of the Tahitian men, including Fletcher, and then Fletcher's wife and the others killed the Tahitian men in retribution. And we can't vet all these things. These are just based on stories. But about 20 years later, when they do find them in 1808, there's only one, like John Adams. He's like the only, not the John Adams in the U.S., but he's like the only surviving man on the island. Well, there's children that have been born to the women, and I think Fletcher's oldest son actually married one of the older Tahitian women, and so it's a very interesting story. But all the men have mysteriously disappeared except for him, and he said one of them died of tuberculosis. But then it kind of makes you wonder, like, why is there only one man left? Like, why did everybody else die? Well, they also said because of drunkenness, and one of them loved to like make alcohol, and they said some of them just died of drunkenness, and I don't know. You can't really sort out the details because there was nobody to vet it, so you don't really know what happened exactly. But it's very tragic, and it just goes to show you that mutiny doesn't always work out. But on the same token, like, that journey was, what was it for? To procure a food source, like, for people that enslaved people. So I feel like it was serendipitous that it didn't work out the first time. And then, I have one last part to say, but I'll be right back. Okay, so breadfruit's actually really good, but you have to season it so it tastes good, because it's just bland if you eat it on its own. And I think that was how they thought, like, once they were able to procure the breadfruit on the second expedition and bring it to Jamaica. And this is just a great act of, like, I think disobedience in a way. Like, the people that were enslaved in Jamaica, they refused to eat it because they said it didn't taste good. And yeah, nowadays people do eat breadfruit in the Caribbean, but that's because they like learned to season it well. But in the beginning, people didn't like it because they were saying you should just eat it bland like this, and I don't blame them. Like, why would you want to eat that? It'd be like eating, I don't know, just because it has a very good flavor, but you have to add like seasonings to it. If you eat it by itself without any seasonings, I've been told it's very bland. But I haven't ate breadfruit, so I can't tell you how I would. But that's the whole story of how breadfruit ended up in the Caribbean. It's not indigenous. It came from Tahiti. It was transported there under circumstances that were not the best. But I became fascinated with Tahiti when I read about this and watched the movies. And I was like, I just want to know more about it. And I would look at pictures and read National Geographic articles. And I would read picture books about it, like the National Geographic photography books. And I became so obsessed, and then I finally read a more well-researched book, Caroline Alexander's The Bounty. Highly recommend it. I have read it many years ago a couple times, and it's been a long time since I've read about this topic, so I can't like speak about it as freshly as I once did, but very interesting story. You should highly read it, highly recommend it. Non-fiction in my mind, like even, it's funny because they take real occurrences, like historical fiction is always based on things that happen in history. It truly is. Like, so I always feel like at the end, when all is said and done, I feel like fictional accounts are just never as interesting as the real history of things. They just aren't. They just are not. And this is the truth of it all. So I would love, in the Hawaii ones, I would love to go to Tahiti. I don't know. I was just thinking about that today when I wear this shirt that I purchased. You know where I found this shirt? We used to look in the like graphic T-shirts. Well, this was years ago before Sears went out of business. Actually, Sears, like the men's department, used to have like the most amazing, beautiful graphic shirts. And I actually some of the shirts, like I've designed shirts myself on Zazzle. But the other shirts that I got that just have cute designs that I purchased, like this one, I found in the men's department. I'm like, which is surprising, but like around that time, I think I got this shirt 2014. Yeah, they had some really cool, like just beautiful, really vibrant shirts in the men's department. And my nephew one time, we went shopping with my parents and my nephew, and he's like, I like these shirts, and we both like bought these really cool palm tree shirts. And my nephew's a very talented artist, by the way. I was just talking to him. He was telling me how he tie-dyed his shirt and he did these drawings on it. And he's going to be 25 on June 25. I want to do something for his birthday. My little guy, anyway. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful day.